The following podcast is a production of Structure Tech, the most highly rated home inspection company in the Midwest.
And people often ask me, what kind of damage can ice dams really do? What is an ice dam? It's when the ice builds up in your gutter, the snow and ice on your house is melting because the heat is escaping from your house, and it forms a puddle behind the ice dam. And that puddle is going to infiltrate your roof and leak into your house.
Welcome everybody to Structure Talk, brought to you by Structure Tech. I'm your host, Bill Ulrich, alongside my loyal hosts, Tessa Murray and Ruben Saltzman. And today we have a special guest alongside of us, Steve Kuhl from Kuhl Construction, right here in Minneapolis. On today's episode, we're going to talk about strategies for removing ice dams, not allowing them to even form on your house. And this is a topic we've covered in the past, but we're going to go a little deeper on some of the more specialty cases. So, Ruben, jump in here. Tell us, what's the problem with ice dams, and when do we see them most regularly?
Well, we see ice dams when you get a ton of snow, and the problem with them is that sometimes it's really expensive to fix them. I mean, we did a podcast not too long ago where we talked about how professionals will fix ice dams the right way, but we never really dug too much into how you can deal with ice dams if that's just not in the cards for you to like tear your roof off and redo it, or gut the inside of your home and redo it that way. I mean, if you've got a 1.5 story, 2.5 story home, you got a vaulted ceiling, cathedral ceiling, sometimes people will call it, you got any of these situations, it can be really tough to deal with ice dams. And that's where Steve Kuhl and the Ice Dam Company comes in. You know, you introduced him as Kuhl Construction, but Steve, you've got like 17 businesses you own now?
Just 4.
Just 4, okay.
But I'm done.
My apologies for...
He's a serial entrepreneur.
Yes, I am,
think.
I've cut it off. Now I have children, so I'm growing those instead of companies.
Oh,
gotcha. Wow.
Smart, smart. You got your priorities.
Yes, I
You
do.
got back to the companies in about, 16 years or so?
In 1987, when I was 17, I started Kuhl's Contracting.
Okay.
When I was in
You
Hopkins
started
High.
Kuhl's Contracting in 1987.
87, yeah. Then Kuhl Design Build in 1999, the Ice Dam Company in 2003, and then most recently Radiant Solutions Company, which is the manufacturer of self-regulating heat cable, in 2015.
Wow.
I'm exhausted just saying it.
And that's Kuhl spelled not C-O-O-L.
No,
right?
I aspire to that, but
Okay.
it's K-U-H-L, which is
Okay.
the German spelling.
All right, so when and why can't you just normally attack these things? You said, Ruben, 2.5 stories or something. I mean, a lot of times we just recommend that people scrape the snow off their roof and go have a great afternoon or something else. But you're talking about tearing into material and insulating and all those kinds of things, or what are we doing here?
Well, yeah, on those houses where it's really expensive to fix and you can't tear into all this stuff without spending a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, a lot of time people hire us to go out and do single item inspections, figure out, why do I have ice dams? I've already hired somebody to re-insulate my attic. I still have issues, or there's no way to get at it. And sometimes we'll come out and we'll say, look, your best option is probably to do heat cables. And when we're recommending that, it's nice to have somebody good to put them on. Because if you just go to the store and you get the $60 box of heat cable and you throw it up yourself on a weekend, it's not going to be the same that you're going to get from a professional. And I thought, there's a ton of information that I have learned from Steve over the past, I don't know, how long have we been working together, Steve? It's been
15
probably
years?
a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've learned so much from Steve over the years. And, I've been encouraging Steve to do a blog, do this, do that. He's like, yeah, you're right, I should.
Yeah. I'm too busy, though. Growing businesses,
Exactly.
I guess.
And kids.
Exactly.
And kids.
But you need to get the message out to the public, Steve.
Yeah.
You need to tell us
Well,
all about this.
I've got a lot to say.
All right.
I've got a lot to say.
All right.
Maybe
Get us
I'll start,
started, man.
Yeah, I'll start by saying that my career has been shaped in large part around the topic of ice dams, either directly or indirectly, through my growth of the construction businesses and my exteriors company. So we do a ton of roofing through Kuhl's Contracting and remodeling through Kuhl Design Build. And then in 2003, I got this idea to start the country's first dedicated ice dam removal business, and that's called the Ice Dam Company. And then after that, of course, the industry blossomed, and now there's hundreds of them. And, a lot of them do a good job, and some of them don't, and we all know about that. But, as to the question of heat cable and its effectiveness, I think we could all agree that it's not the best answer. And it's not the first answer. And I tell this to our clients all the time. Even as a guy who owns a company who actually manufactures the heat cable, I tell people it's not your first answer. Your first answer is architectural modifications, which we all talked about, and you are all experts in that, which include air sealing, insulation, and ventilation. A couple of things that I would add are that there are certain homes where solar orientation plays a pretty significant role, where one roof pitch actually gets hit by UV, and that meltwater runs down to a shaded roof pitch and refreezes into an ice dam, and that can cause big problems. We could get into the value of investing in good heat cable versus bad and what those things look like, how you identify one from the other, if you'd like to do that now.
Well, you know what? Let's just back up, if it's okay, Steve. Talk about what the heat cable does, because there's a lot of, there's so many misconceptions about this. I have people say, well, I tried a heat cable, but I still saw ice forming. I think people have the whole wrong idea about why you even put the heat cable up and what its job is.
Yes, so what heat cable is not meant to do is to keep all of the snow and ice off of your eaves. That is a myth. Nor would you want to pay the cost for such a project, because in our climate, that would cost thousands of dollars in electricity every winter.
That was the question I had. It's like, how do these things affect your electric bill?
Yeah, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. But so the point of heat cable, when it's operated properly, is to create melted pathways that water uses to escape off of a roof. And so you will see, if you go to our website or any one of the websites, you'll see pictures of heat cable operating on roofs with snow on them, and it just looks like there's a zigzag pattern, a melted pathway through the snow. And that is a good cable system. So the idea is not to keep ice and snow off of the roof. The idea is to create melted pathways for the escape of water. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And what's your website, by the way? I'll put on a link for this podcast. But what is it?
RadiantSolutionsCompany.com.
Okay.
Is the company, that's the manufacturer's website. That is my website for the manufacturing company. And then there's the Ice Dam Company, which has operated as an installation division for many, many years. We've installed miles of this cable, which is how I sort of got into the business originally.
So you had mentioned you're the manufacturer of this cable as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because we're going to talk about that when we get back. When we get back, I want to kind of recap the building science reasons why this is all happening. And then we're going to dive into how you started making these cables, how long they last, all that good stuff. So we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Bill Ulrich from Structure Talk. We talk a lot about maintenance on the podcast. If you're like me, I'd rather be doing anything other than maintaining my house. Problem is, my neglectful nature can bring unexpected surprises. So what's a fantasy football fan like me to do? Punt! That's why I recommend Cura Home Maintenance. They actually like home maintenance, and they're happy to do it for you. For a couple dollars a day, they'll keep your home on track. They free you up to enjoy your weekends. Check them out at curahome.com. That's K-U-R-A home.com. Gotta get back to the game. You're listening to Structure Talk, brought to you by Structure Tech, the most highly rated home inspection company in the Midwest. Before we went to the break, so we said we were going to talk about the building science, but we've decided to table that conversation. We feel like we've kind of beaten this to death. You got warm air leaking out of your house, it's melting snow, and it's causing a problem. So Tessa, you and I were talking before we started, and you've been running into a lot of these cables lately on the roof, and they're frayed out, and they look like they're probably not working, and I know you had some questions for Steve, so what's on your mind?
I was just wondering, Steve, why do these heat cables get such a bad rap? Are they dangerous? Do they damage your roof? Do they damage the shingles? The
answer is yes. Right?
Yeah.
Which might surprise you, but here's something that nobody really talks about, is that 90% of the cables bought and installed in America are cheap, constant wattage heat cable. Constant wattage, what does that mean? Well, they can be identified most easily by the brand names that they're sold under, which are Easy Heat, Frost King, Wrap-On. If you go to Menards, you go to Home Depot, to Lowe's, any big box retailer, and most even small hardware stores are going to sell this stuff called constant wattage. And the principle behind that cable is that it operates like a synapse in your brain. It's 100% on or off. It also is the fact that it is very cheaply made, and it has many, many issues that cause the underlying problems that people complain about.
What's the average lifespan of a cable like that?
1
Constant
year.
wattage. Really?
One year. We rip out miles and miles of constant wattage. And this is why heat cable has a bad reputation, is that people want to buy the cheap stuff and install the cheap stuff.
What's cheap? Because when they put it on my house, when they re-roofed it several years ago, it was like $2,000 worth, which didn't feel cheap, but I'm kind of guessing you're going to tell me they put cheap stuff.
I don't know. Visually, it looks like coaxial, which is to say it's about
exactly what it looks like.
So it's about 1/4 inch in diameter. It's usually black.
Yep.
And that is constant wattage cable.
So does your cabling look different than that?
It is. It is about 1/4 of an inch thick by 1/2 an inch wide. And I've got samples on the floor, which you won't be able to see on the podcast.
We can put a link in the show
So
notes.
it's kind of like Romex.
It does have the dimensions of Romex,
Okay.
but it's black, and it's the fundamentals of its construction are completely different than constant wattage.
So what separates it?
I'll tell you about some of the limitations of constant wattage cable, and this is going to blow your mind. And the only reason that anybody ever buys this product is that it's cheap, and because they don't know about it. They haven't read the manuals. So number one, constant wattage cable cannot be installed on wood roofs, on rubber roofs, metal roofs, or any roofing material besides asphalt. Nor can it be installed on flat roofs. And people try to do this all the time. So that's a pretty big limitation.
People are breaking the rules out there.
People are breaking the rules.
Why,
Oh my
why not
goodness,
on?
yes.
Why not?
Yeah, why not
can't-
metal?
It poses a fire hazard. All you need to do is look in their manual. Fire
On metal?
Yes. Unless you pay to have an electrician electrically ground
Oh my
all of the
gosh.
metal on your house, such as your gutters, your gutter guards.
I guess if it gets frayed or something, you don't want to. You don't
Short
want
it out
Yeah.
with the metal and
Well, constant wattage maybe its main limitation is that it's not supposed to overlap itself. And all of you, having seen many of these systems over the years, probably can attest to the fact that a lot of times these systems end up looking like spaghetti, and the cables are all over themselves. They're just in a big pile,
Yeah.
they're twisted. That automatically disqualifies the cable from any warranty coverage, number one, and it shorts the cable out. So any installation of constant wattage cable that has a single overlap is likely to fail. Whereas self-regulating heat cable, which is the other main, I'd say branch of the heat cable family, and this is what we manufacture, can overlap itself as much as you want. You could wrap your baby in it. It's never going to overheat. It's never going to burn. It's never going to short out. It doesn't matter what it touches. It can be used on any surface whatsoever.
So, what's the average lifespan of your regulated wattage?
Self-regulating heat cable. Ours carries a 5-year warranty. You can
Okay.
expect at least 10 years of reliable service out of it. It's a commercial product. When you feel it, you can tell the difference.
And then, in terms of price difference,
It's quite a bit more expensive, at least on the front end.
Okay.
Until you start to talk about energy consumption and some of these other variables. So I think 100 feet of easy heat might cost $90, and 100 feet of self-regulating cable might cost $300. So you might think it's 3 times more expensive.
but the difference is, you're installing these once every 10 years versus once every year. It's what you should
Year
be
or
doing.
two.
The big box
well,
store.
that's one cost difference. But really, the main one is that if you think about what it costs to have a false sense of security. I'm all protected, and next thing you know, you've got water leaking in through your wall cavities, buckling the floor, wrecking the cabinets,
Yeah.
and doing all the other things that we are familiar with. That gets into the, can be upwards in tens of thousands of dollars of damage, all based on the fact that you thought, we were protected from this constant wattage heat cable.
Do insurance companies cover that sort of damage?
Most insurance companies cover the damage as the result of the ice dams.
Okay, but not the ice dams themselves.
Some will remove or pay for the removal of ice dams, but it's not that common.
one other cost that we're maybe not considering here too is what about the cost of the electricity? I mean, don't those constant wattage cables use a lot more
That's a great
electricity
question.
too?
Yeah, so we know that in this environment, in the Minneapolis area, that it's not uncommon to have temperature fluctuate between 0 degrees and 40 degrees in December, January, February. We see these fluctuations happen all the time. Constant wattage cable is going to burn at 100% hot the entire time. Self-regulating cable, and this is where the technology is pretty cool. Not to geek out too deeply on it, but the basic
Please
concept.
do.
Well, here, Steve, save that thought.
Okay.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's geek out on technology. Hi, everyone. Bill Ulrich here with Structure Talk. Do you live in a home that has a homeowners association attached to it? Here's an interesting nugget. In 2019, Minnesota passed a law that requires all HOAs have a preventive maintenance plan in place. What's that, you say? I know, right? And what's necessary is clear as mud. At Structure Tech, we put together an affordable solution to help HOAs meet this obligation. If your association isn't talking about this, they should be. check out how we can help at StructureTech1.com. We've been working closely with management companies all year to come up with a win-win-win to meet this new requirement. Let us know if we can help at StructureTech1.com. Welcome back. You're listening to Structure Talk, brought to you by Structure Tech, the most highly rated home inspection company in the Midwest. So, Steve, before we went to the break, you were just about to dive into the techno world of heat cables. So tell us the difference, tell us the magic that happens in these premium cables that you're installing.
The magic, okay, the bar. You've set the bar high. This is a pretty boring topic for some people, but for me it's exciting. The way that self-regulating heat cable works is that it responds dynamically along its entire length to ambient temperatures. And so what does that mean? What it means is that if I had a section of our cable and I had part of it in my hand and part of it in an ice water bath, the part in the ice water could be 3 inches away and it'll be way hotter than the part in my hand. And so we ask, well, how does that work? It's cable. You look at it and it looks like essentially a dumb system, right? It's just a piece of cable. Well, the idea is that there are two main conductors in the cable, which are 16-gauge wires that are embedded in a carbon-infused core. And to the layman, it just looks like a piece of black plastic. But the carbon-infused core operates in a very simple way, an ingenious way, which is that when there are ambient temperatures that are colder outside, that conductive core contracts microscopically and it draws those conductors slightly closer together. When those two conductors are drawn closer together, there are more electrical pathways created through the carbon in that body or that matrix.
I wish everybody could see the hand signals that are going on.
Right. Yes, the hands are so important to this. You can see the visualization. The cables are drawn together, and there's more conductive pathways, which generates more heat. And the inverse applies when it's warmer outside, and which is one of the reasons I love this cable, is that it's not cranking at 100% all the time. When we have 40 degrees out, it's generating a lot less heat and consuming a lot less energy.
Where did this technology come from?
The original developer, to the best of my knowledge, was a company called Raychem, and they still exist. They're kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the heat cable industry, in the self-regulating heat cable industry.
You used to install those, right?
I used to install those.
Okay.
And hence is the origin of my company, because I quickly came upon the idea that, I know that the companies I am buying from are not necessarily making this stuff, and I'm going to find out who is making this stuff.
Yeah.
And I did.
Okay.
And then I did some re-engineering, and we made the product better, and now we use a factory that makes for a couple other of the very big sellers, but our cables are quite a bit more affordable because, we don't have a intergalactic business network to support in terms of overhead.
Yeah.
Where's the manufacturing happening?
China.
Okay. And so you've redeveloped cables, you've redeveloped clips. We've got some clips here on the table that are revolutionizing how this installation is happening.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this comes from my background as a roofing contractor in having seen hundreds of installations with traditional nail-on roof clips that require, as you guessed it, nails to be driven through the roof system in order to support the cable and hang the cable. And it never really felt right to me. And so I developed something called the grip clip about, I guess it was 4 years ago, which relies on a nail-free system. And you could think of it as a toothy pincher that basically slides up onto the shingle and provides the holding power that we need to keep the cable systems in place. And each one of those clips holds 40 pounds, according to our latest testing, which is far beyond the requirements of any heat cable system.
Wow. So now, let me ask you, what about if somebody, you're local here, you're based out of Hopkins. You do a lot of these installations. You've got the heat cable manufacturing company, then you've got the ice dam company, and that's the company who does the actual installation of it. If somebody in a different part of the country wants to get your product, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, we have a number of different e-commerce websites that all kind of drain into the same retail back end.
Okay.
It's a smart way of doing business. Our biggest selling channel is Amazon, and we're the largest seller of this product in North America on Amazon.
Wow.
So that's not a bad deal. And so people all over the country, a lot of contractors buy it through Amazon, and we have direct relationships with lots of contractors. And right now we're building out a certified installer network around the country so that we're going to have an index on our website that people can click on to find installers that know what they're doing inside their territory.
Is this something a homeowner could do on their own?
Absolutely.
Do you sell the clips too?
Yes, especially with the grip clip. We're making a video right now to show people how to install these, but it makes it cuts the installation time down by probably an eighth. These things install in 3 seconds. And if you don't like the placement, you can peel them off and reinstall them with your hands.
It doesn't damage the
It
shingle.
does not damage the shingles, and there are no tools required.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy.
Now, what about electrical requirements?
So most of our cables are sold. This is a pre-established plug-in kit, what you can see here lying on the desk. So it's what we call a plug-and-go system. We also sell systems off of the spool, mostly to contractors. In the case of the Heat Tape Pro pre-assembled kits, we can run up to 150 feet off a traditional outlet, 15 amp outlet, residential.
Okay. I assume this has to be plugged directly into an outlet, no extension cords.
No extension cords.
And does this need to be a GFCI protected outlet?
It needs to be, we recommend a GFCI protected, either the outlet itself or the circuit.
Okay.
You had to get that in there, Ruben, right? A little safety
Just
tip
want to
there.
make sure. Just want to make sure.
Home inspector has spoken.
Yeah.
GFCI.
Bill's rolling his eyes.
Here's my question, Steve. I've got a simple little house in the city, which is the next thing I was going to mention is, do you do any work in the suburbs? I mean, oh, you do. Okay, he's shaking his head. Okay.
Our service area is the greater Twin Cities area.
Okay, but I imagine your epicenter of work is right inside the city limits of Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But, okay, that's where I am. Beautiful urban core. Thank you.
Zip it.
Yeah.
Lots of issues with ice dams.
I don't have them anymore after some spray foam, but sounds like, I probably need to redo these because they've been out there for about 7 years now. So 28 by 32 house, simple roof line. I don't have a lot of stuff going on, so I've got them weaving up and down on my north side and just in the gutters on my south side. So what does a person like me expect to pay?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. What we've developed is something called a heat cable calculator, and we actually own the URL. So if you visit www.heatcablecalculator.com, it'll direct you to a simple online calculator which allows you to put in just a few bits of data, including the eave length that you want to protect, the depth of the soffit or overhang, which is critically important, and I'll talk about that in a second, if you have gutters, and if you have a valley that's affected.
Okay, so for everybody who didn't maybe catch that, eave length was what you had said, which is the overhang at, how far does your roof stick out beyond your exterior wall?
That's the eave depth.
Oh, gotcha.
Eave length might be how long, if you have a gutter, how long is that gutter?
Oh,
That's
sure.
the length
Sure.
of the eave.
Where I
What the
started with the
calculator does is a little bit of basic geometry to automatically calculate how many feet you need. And then there's a section in there, a line, a cell where you can enter special circumstances such as I have 10 feet from the bottom of my downspout and to the outlet. And then that'll tell you the parts and pieces you need, including downspout hangers, which we could talk about, the number of clips you need, the number and the specific cable length you need.
Okay, so is the material the most expensive part of this, or is the installation the most expensive part of this?
The installation.
It is?
Which
okay.
which gets back to the importance of buying good stuff. Because if you're going to pay to have somebody up on a ladder on your roof doing this stuff, you may as well put something in that's going to last quite a while.
Sure, makes perfect sense.
What do you think a price range would be just for the materials? Let's say it's a do-it-yourselfer who wants to order up a system on a house that Bill described, but can you just give us like a range, like $1,000 to $5,000 or something like that?
No, it's usually $400 to $600 for an average house just in the materials. And
Very helpful.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and our installations are going to be $1,200 to $2,000, and that just depends on the variables that we've described here.
With some of just the headache and the emotion that this causes people, that's nothing. I mean, many people would be so glad to pay that to say, look, you're not going to have any leaks from ice dams, any problem for the next 5 years or whatever it is that these things are going to last. It seems like just a no-brainer.
Yeah, it is a no-brainer. If you can't afford to do the architectural modifications that we all know are a good idea, so that's one situation where heat cable is a great idea. Another might be where people, in the case of story-and-a-half homes that you've discussed previously, where there's almost no way to prevent ice dams on those homes. Well, what's the other answer? You either need to be diligent about roof raking, which is not terribly realistic for everybody, or you need to install something like heat cable.
And if you install the heat cable on your house, there's very specific times you need to turn it on and turn it off and all of that, right? Can you talk about how to actually operate these properly?
Yeah, so there's a couple, being that it's self-regulating, it is going to adjust itself to ambient temperatures and have some efficiency there. But a level above that, and this is an ingenious little plastic device called the thermocube, but developed by a chicken farmer who many years ago wanted to figure out a way to turn on light bulbs in his little coops, automatically to warm the chickens or whatever they do. And he developed this thing, and they sell on Amazon for $12. And the idea is simple, which is you plug that into your exterior outlet, and you plug your cable into that, and at 35 degrees, it just turns on. At 50 degrees, it turns off. So at a certain point, it's not going to be running inefficiently. Yeah.
Wow. So you don't actually have to do it yourself. You can just buy this device, plug it in.
You can do that, or you can invest in more sophisticated controls, which we do sell, but those usually range $700 to $1,200 worth, and those are thermostatic controls that also sense moisture, which is important. I know.
I'll get the thermocube for $12.
Yeah. Yeah, and a switched outlet. A lot of people will install a switched outlet that has a LED in it. You just know it's on.
Yeah.
Although something that's cool about our cable is that it's got an LED plug, a clear LED plug, so you can always look at it and know that it's energized.
Oh, I like that.
So when you compare these systems, the constant wattage to the intelligent smart system, what are we looking at in terms of electrical use? Is one 50%, 75%?
They're going to be pretty comparable.
Oh, they are. Okay.
When temperatures are low. When they're up, say, around 20 degrees, that's the sweet spot. But when it gets warm, our cable is going to be quite a bit more affordable to operate. Which brings me to another point about constant wattage cable. There are many, many deficiencies in these systems. But if you read the manual, you're not supposed to use these systems if it's below 15 degrees because they can actually exacerbate ice dam problems.
What? How?
Yes. Also, if you use
Ruben,
them...
don't give me that what. You've read that manual,
No.
and you absolutely know it.
Also, if you
That's
use them
crazy.
above 35 degrees, you risk fire and electrical shock. This is all taken right out of the Easy Heat manuals. So there's a sweet spot for them, 15 to 35 degrees, where you can use constant wattage cable safely. Anything outside of that, all bets are off.
How does
there
it make
any-
the problem worse if it's run when it's
Because
colder
the
than
cable
15?
gets embedded in ice. It cannot keep up. It does not have the guts to keep up with the cold.
Are there any documented cases of homes burning down from little Johnny plugged in the heat cable in,
Yes.
in August?
In fact, this is a true story. I was in Edina about 3 years ago, and for a client with a cedar roof, and he said, "Hey, while you're here, you do heat cable?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went out. We walked around the back of his house, and there was a smoldering pile of Easy Heat up on his roof. And he said, "Yeah, I plugged that in a couple of weeks ago." And he said, "Wait, well, that doesn't look right." And I said, "No, Chris, that's actually really not right at all. There's a smoldering pile of electrical cable on your wood roof.
Oh my
So let's
gosh.
unplug that." Now, that's an extreme circumstance because he plugged it in. It was probably 60 degrees. It was a fall day. But the point is, this stuff, it's not safe. I don't believe it's safe to operate.
Wow.
One other thing in the Easy Heat manual is that you're supposed to, at least once a month, clear leaves and all combustibles away from the cable. Out of your gutters, in your downspouts, off the roof. No leaves or combustibles are allowed to touch this cable. That's not terribly realistic.
No.
Crazy.
Yeah, because a lot of people install these heat cables on roofs that they can't rake or they can't get to physically. So if
Right.
it's 2 or 3 stories up, you're not going to be going up there and cleaning out every single leaf from your gutter.
No.
No.
Do you remember this spring? The helicopter season was out of this world. I think I had 10 inches of helicopters on my gutters and just sitting right on top of the cables. I have no idea what brand they are, but they weren't plugged in because it was May anyway, but wow. This is really interesting. I had no idea there was
Me
this
neither.
amount of technology behind
Right.
this black cable that just is
It looks
weaving
like
up and down on your house.
It's a wire. It looks like a wire, but there's a big difference. That self-regulating cable, not much just talking about our product. So I want to be clear about this to anybody listening. If you don't buy Heat Tape Pro, that's fine. Buy a self-regulating heat cable that you like and, look into it. It's such a no-brainer when you actually understand the deficiencies of the constant wattage system. One more is that can be repaired. If you drag it across a gutter hanger strap or your dog chews on it, I don't know. Self-regulating heat cable can be repaired. One nick in a constant wattage cable, the whole thing needs to be thrown away.
Interesting. And I'm sure I've got several nicks in mine after I've pulled it through my downspout extension several times. So I see Ruben open up his computer. I think he's already started the next blog on heat cables.
It's going through
Ruben,
my head.
as long as you're working on your blog, can you tell us where everybody can find it?
Go to structuretech1.com and you'll see blog right at the top, or if you Google just about anything related to home inspections, you'll probably find it. Google home inspection blog. It should be the first thing you find.
How many blogs over the years have you done on heat cables?
0.
That changes
one in our
here.
near future. Yeah, Steve, you and I got to partner up on this one. There's a lot to know about this.
I had no
Right.
idea about self-regulating cables. No idea.
I know.
I guess I'm
Nobody
most surprised that you, Ruben, haven't read the owner's manual for cozy heat cables or
I'm
whatever
so
they're called.
embarrassed.
I'm
So
I'm embarrassed for you
Yeah,
and disappointed.
I'm hanging my head in shame. I won't talk
true.
anymore.
All right, this is fantastic information, Steve. We really appreciate it. Can you tell everybody again the name of the 17 companies? Or
Kuhl Design Build is the remodeling firm. Kuhl's Contracting is exteriors, roofing. The Ice Dam Company speaks for itself. And then Radiant Solutions Company is my manufacturing business that does heat cable.
all right,
Sweet. We'll give you some links on the podcast.
Thank you.
thanks everybody. We'll catch you next time. You've been listening to Structure Talk, Structure Tech presentation, brought to you by the most highly rated home inspection company in the Midwest.
To see what makes us different from our competition, please check out Ruben's Home Inspection blog, which is updated weekly at structuretech1.com. For more information on how we can provide you with the right information about your home before you buy or sell, contact us at structuretech1.com.